Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for tonight's coverage of VSR Season 11 Round 7. As always, I'm Regan Clark. You join us here in drastically different conditions from the first part of our Italian doubleheader here in the second half of the season, reeling away from what was a sunny Misano to a very rainy Monza here at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. The third ever dedicated motor racing circuit ever constructed, founded in 1922. It was mainland Europe's first, comprised of 11 turns and 3.6 miles of FIA Grade 1, home of the Italian Grand Prix in Formula 1, and has been so since 1950, with Grand Prix racing before the advent of the Formula 1 World Championship, having raced here since the 20s. Other than Formula 1, it hosts rounds of the GT World Challenge Europe Series, having returned to the calendar from 2023 onwards. In some of its former events, it hosted, with the FIA World Endurance Championship and its preceding series, the 6 Hours of Monza, which lasted until 2023. The first race was ran in 1949. It is a fantastic circuit, no doubt, here, Monza, a legendary venue here for motorsports, the Temple of Speed, as it's come to be known. But in today's trying conditions, it's going to be tough for the drivers to really max out through the gears on the run down towards Turn 1 off the exit of Turn 11 today. Taking a look then into the championship standings, first off with the previous wins of this season, taking a look to see that Carlos Disch is now back on winning form. Outside of Platinum, though, it has been returning victories for Antonio Angeletta and Mantas Mantinho in silver and bronze, but notably out of last round at round 6 at Misano, gave Chris Davies, the two-time VSR champion, his first win of the season in gold. Taking a look then away from the previous wins into the scope of the championship standings, starting things off in the Platinum category, where Carlos Disch leads over Fake Galaxy, Will Friedman catching up. Still a triple header of Fords leading that standing, with Kieran Rod now 4th. Cas van Veltzen, after last round, moves up to 5th. He's up and ahead of Alan Alexander, who made his debut as well at Misano with Porsche. He's 6th place at the back of the Platinum standings. In gold, Lee Evans leads over Ian Oates, the two now separate by 21 points on the run in towards round 7 today. Tom Barlow in 3rd, with Chris Davies, after his maiden victory of season 11, now 4th, up and ahead of Solomon Bosworth at the back of gold's top 5. In the silver standings, Antonio Angeletta is ahead of Robert Ogan there by nearly a full 100-point margin, 99 points between the pair of them as things would stand. And having a glance, actually no, sorry, it's 101 points in difference. Actually, is that the case there? We'll have to catch up with you on that one. Andres Tishavari in 3rd, and very close behind him then, currently in the scope of 4 points difference, is Thomas Pumerol in 4th. Sean McNally rounds out the top 5 with Lewis Perslow in 6th, Callum Gray in 7th, with Julian Aquati in 8th, Matthias Gonalons in 9th. And so we were told, yes, it was 99 points between the leading pair in silver. Maths still not a strong suit here on TRTN. At the bronze standings, we see here Mantas Mantinho has now taken the lead of the bronze division. Ryan Castle in 2nd, with Alessandro Brancalini in 3rd place. Peter Michaelis in 4th, with Wayne Trigg in 5th. Timo in 6th, and Parvis Agaverdi in 7th. So we see here with Carlos Disch, having watched on with him as he spun around in the pit lane, taking a look at the session at large, sees the return of a legacy driver here on VSR. He went by the username Indian Goat for the longest time, but we know him as Declan Anderson. The number 9 joins the grid in the gold category, currently 2nd fastest in today's session, up and ahead of Fake Galaxy for 2nd place there by a factor of 13 thousandths of a second. Taking a look in towards what the session will hold for us today and what balance and performance concerns us with here in the last 6 minutes of free practice. Taking a look at the calendar, we're here for round 7 coming up around the corner. 20 minutes of qualifying and an hour and 30's worth of racing. Single mandatory pit stop. Many drivers were hoping for drier conditions, but they'll have to settle with what they're given today here in what looks to be torrential conditions here in Monza. Looking at the balance of performance for today, BMW would have found themselves lightest in class, but sadly no attendees from the M6. We saw Ian Skeen compete last round with the M6, but the Porsche 991 Type 2 GT3R will find itself with 30 kilos of reduced weight. That'll be great news then for Alan Alexander, a real ace when it comes to wet racing. We've seen his victories over on the Sunday League, covered by us here on TRTN at the behest of NLRL. We'll see what he can do with the older spec Porsche 911 991. The 992 joins them, though, in the weight loss department, as it would be the case here. The 992 losing only 7 kilos to the 991's 30. Into the positives, Mercedes gain a single kilo, Aston Martin gain 3, McLaren 4, Ferrari 8, BMW's M4 will gain 12, and Ford back on the short end, I should say, of the stick when it comes to things here in the BOP. 20 kilos back on for the Mustang. That's not stopped them, however, from topping the timing charts here in the trailing end of free practice. It does look to be very trying conditions for the run in towards today's session. We do have a full qualifying prediction coming up around the corner. It's going to be interesting to see what the drivers can make of it. We're back onto a traditional qualifying setup, not the one-shot qualifying we saw in Misano. They gave us quite a varied grid indeed. Watching here with Andres Tichavari on his way down through to the Variante della Roggia. Here's going to be very tough conditions at play today. Normally, Monza has given us chaos with the dry conditions in force, as we've seen on multiple occasions in the last couple of months. But wet racing is something that strictly eludes this track for the longest time, perhaps because they know the consequences that which lie for the race up and ahead with conditions like these today. It's a scary thing to run down to the Variante Rettifilo in the dry. It's going to be even scarier now with less grip at play. And going to catch on board here with Antonio Angeletta as he makes his way down towards the Variante Rettifilo. He'll be our guide here for the track just in the end of free practice before we get on towards qualifying. Out through the Variante Rettifilo then, the most dreaded turn 1 in motorsports history. Out through then to the Curva Grande, turn 3, on board at the moment with the number 1 of Angeletta. Up and around turn 3 into the second of 3 Variantes on this circuit. The Variante della Roggia turns 4 and 5. Making our way down through. Often is the case where these two corner sections are cited as the primary source of a great majority of incidents. Well, that's not necessarily 100% the case, though they are definitely focal points for racing incidents. I'd say an area to keep an eye out for would be the Variante Ascari coming up in a moment's time. We're at the Curva de Lesmo, turn 6 and turn 7. And to address the concerns of what conditions are looking like on track, despite the fact that it's registered as wet conditions, the rain is set to pick up here as we make our way down the Curva de Seraglio. Track conditions, 19 degrees ambient, 23 on track somehow, so it is a strangely lukewarm raining spell here at Monza, down through Ascari. Now, this section has caught many a driver out before. This is the area they don't expect trouble to emerge from, but it's those killer curbs on the inside of each swing of that corner. Turns 8, 9, and 10 that catch the drivers out when they least expect it. Get up over those curbs and find the consequences therein. That will be something plenty of drivers try to avoid over the course of today's race. In towards turn 11 at the Curva Parabolica as we round the final corner, I should say. The penultimate corner would have been turn 10. Out through the final corner here at Parabolica. Sharp on entry and loosens out on exit. Down towards the line then for Angeletta, currently 23rd with no time set. Across the line he goes and sets in the 20th fastest time at 2 minutes, 0.835. Looking back into the session then, with the majority of the fastest drivers now settling in for a quiet end to free practice, with conditions still on the worse end to when they started about an hour ago now. And taking a look at the current division leads, conditions are wet. Just to give a quick update there, because we've seen a few people in chat asking, yes, the conditions are wet right now. In terms of the division leads here at the trailing end of free practice, with wet conditions looking possibly to stay in towards qualifying and the race thereafter for an hour and 30 minutes of racing. This is going to be a rather interesting one to follow with, because right now leading platinum, very close to the leader in gold, is Carlos Disch. Leading gold then Declan Anderson on his return to VSR. Leading the silvers is Julian Aquati with Porsche, and leading the bronze drivers as it stands right now, Peter Mikulas in 10th place overall in free practice. Down to the line there goes Mikulas, stays in 10th place. And when we get into the talks of the qualifying predictions just around the corner, they are relatively close, but they were originally gauged for drier and more amicable conditions here in Monza. This will be anything but for the run in towards qualifying here for round 7. As we cross then into the last minute, we're coming up on about 30 seconds left to go in the session. There are still a few drivers out on track. We saw from Mikulas's point of view just a moment ago. Also outlapping the track here, currently 19th in the session, is Sean McNally, as it would appear. Getting on here as he makes his way in through to Ascari, the number 4 Mercedes AMG. Out through turns 8, 9, and 10 on the run up towards turn 11. Making his way then down towards turn 11. Right to the end then of free practice. You'll see the checkered flag in just a moment's time to bring about the end of this session. Nearest to the line from behind him, the number 88. That'll be for Old Dolarup down in the bronze division. Down to the line then goes McNally. From 19th on the field, leaps up there to 14th for the end of this session. Number 88 coming down to the line. Here comes Dolarup with Ferrari down at turn 11. Number 26 following in his midst there. Mantas Mantinho now having recently taken the lead of bronze. Currently ranks in Division 2nd at the end of free practice. We'll see for Dolarup across the line from 19th at the end of this session. As it would appear, across the line he goes there, stays in 19th, though for some reason wasn't shown the checkered flag. At the end of this session, down to the line goes Mantas Mantinho, up and ahead of McNally to 14th place at the end of this session. Number 87 approaching the line. That'll be for Andres Tichavari. He's back into the pit lane. Number 11 nearby to the line. We'll see if that's the same story here for Peter Mikolas. Yes, it is. Down into the pit lane he goes. And at the end of free practice. And this is definitely going to be quite a sigh of relief for the drivers here. And what was an absolute onslaught weather-wise in towards the end of free practice. We do find ourselves rather blessed here to find much drier, much more favourable conditions on the run in towards quali. On board here with Carlos Dish, first among the fray to exit the pit lane. From behind him, approaching there is Lee Evans to the exit of the pits with Mercedes. So checking in then with the 54 and looking in towards qualifying predictions here for round 7 of season 11 of VSR. Fake Galaxy currently predicted at pole position. Carlos Dish in second with Declan Anderson on his return to the series, looking at a possible third place start. And bear in mind, all of these timings were based off of drier and more useful conditions for these drivers. So now that we find ourselves looking at just that here for 20 minutes worth of qualifying, much brighter, much sunnier conditions than free practice would have had us believe, things are looking rather interesting now as we'll be getting closer to those predicted times. Looking further down the order then, Chris Davies in 4th, Antonio Angeletta in 5th, Lee Evans in 6th, Sean McNally 7th, Peter Mikolas in 8th, Robert Ogan in 9th, and Wayne Trigg in 10th. 2 bronze drivers then inside of the predicted top 10 here, that being Mikolas and Trigg. That ought to be an interesting one to see. Also taking a look in as well up at the front of the field, that gap between Galaxy and Dish. We're looking in the ballpark there of having a quick glance at the maps here. That's about 370 thousandths of a second we're talking between these two to find themselves at that current interval. So very, very close indeed as it would stand between the two leading Mustangs. Of course, when you take a look at their track record over the last couple of weeks, both of which have gone on to take wins in this series, 2 for Galaxy and now 3 for Dish after last week in Misano. So it ought to be rather interesting then. That solitary win for Friedman, so we're told he's going to be onto the grid. Yes, he is. We do see now joining the session, bringing the current tally of drivers up to 24. Will Friedman, a man on a mission who we saw earlier this week on our Monday night coverage of Fats GT over in Kyalami, was hell-bent on a return to the top 10. And it was a brilliant drive for him when we saw the action out through Midrand, South Africa. Carlos Dish then starts the first of the flying laps on board then with the 2-time champion, formerly known as White Doctor, Carlos Dish, on his way down through turns 1 and 2. And in the discussion of speed, we'll see if we have the data for it here, but we have had quite a long-standing look of things for the pace in terms of straight line speed for these cars. Down between turns 11 and turns 1, we've been, over the last couple of seasons with our collaboration with NLRL, been taking data samples of top end for the cars. Now, sadly, we don't have the graphic for it for this broadcast, but take a look back through any of our other Monza broadcasts to see the same reports there. What we've been told, and this is a rather interesting one indeed, Ford is definitely capable here at the front of the field. They're one of the fastest on this grid right now. And just as we quickly have a little gander through our notes. Okay, so we I believe did have data before, and I think this was in reference to the BMW having ridiculously fast straight line speed. As it stands there, we, for the life of us, can't seem to find the notes on it. Oh well. It's a case here where Ford will find themselves in the absence of BMW, the fastest in category. 175 miles an hour is what they're capable of over the course of this straight line section, coming out from turn 11 in towards turn 1. As we just see here, Carlos Dish about to finish off the first of his flying laps. Down to the line comes the number 54. So first among the onslaught here for qualifying. Down across the line he goes, 149.307. Nearest the line, number 44. Approaching the line, then goes Lee Evans. Goes second fastest by 1.4 seconds. Then nearest to the line, we see among them the number 6, but up in front is Sean McNally. So 2 Mercedes cars on their way to the line, that being McNally and Ian Oates. We see here McNally across the line, and so too was Oates. The two now onto the podium, with Oates up in front of McNally for second place, and the only driver so far to be within a second. Across the line goes the 96. Following in his trails was the 222. Thomas Pumerol goes third fastest. Then the number 1 across the line. That was for Antonio Angeletta for 6th. Then approaching the line, thick and fast here, a bunch of different drivers. Number 26, number 71, number 89. The list will continue to go on. Number 69 across the line here, we see for Julian Aquati, goes second fastest for Porsche. We see up in front of him there is a McLaren harbouring damage, as it would appear, over the course of this session. I believe that, yes, is Parvis Agaverdi in the number 717. Now across the line, Fake Galaxy goes faster than Carlos Disch by a single tenth of a second after the first 5 minutes of qualifying. Down to the line comes the number 9. And Declan Anderson, fastest with Ferrari on his return to the series. Now dethrones Ford from the top step. Now, we've seen from Ferrari in recent months that their original estimate was around 172 miles an hour. In the hands of other drivers, we've seen that been pushed up to 174 miles an hour in the top end range between turns 11 and 1. So Ferrari may very well have a trick up their sleeve here with Anderson, a driver who is stuck with Ferrari for the longest time here. I fail to recall any times we've seen him without the Ferrari 296. Declan Anderson now fastest in the session, 148.975. Carlos Disch sends a returning volley, 148.450. It's worth noting there's not really been much runoff from the weather from free practice. We're not in greasy conditions as we reel away from the recent weather cycle. No, we're in green conditions, so we are still relatively fast here. Albeit, it looked like those times under the qualifying predictions for today were definitely set in optimum conditions. Across the line goes McNally, now 4th and ahead of Aquati. Across the line goes Ian Oates, stays in 7th place. Across the line from him just a moment ago, though, we saw for the introduction there of Antonio Angeletta to the top 5. We also got to see there Chris Davies is now into the top 10 in his recent volley. We see that he's really not too far off from Ian Oates. Now goes down to 8th, though, because Mantas Mantinho joins the fray, now leading the bronze division. We see Davies down to the line from 8th to 4th. Agaverdi from behind him. And then from behind Agaverdi was the 555 Stefan Nicolai. With Mercedes, goes 10th fastest. Number 77 across the line a moment ago. And that was for, looking here, Ryan Castle, having recently lost the lead of the bronze division. Number 88 and number 9 coming to the line, we see for Old Dollar up. Right behind him is Declan Anderson. As it would stand for Dollar up 17th. Anderson stays in 2nd. Number 55 across the line. Fake Galaxy tries to bring things in closer. Right now, as it stands, is looking here 202 thousandths away from Anderson in 2nd, and 757 thousandths off from Disch at the lead. Mr. Bernie back into the fray here, the number 196. As it stands, we see rain hitting the track here, so that really is the end of the run of things here in qualifying. It's only downhill from here, so Bernie will be beside himself with glee to see that he's now 15 thousandths up the road off of Davies, who now joins the top 5. And those times are only going to start getting slower and slower and slower. And we do see here a return to normality, as it would appear, for Alan Alexander. Following in the recent growing tradition among not only previous contestants of this championship, such as John O'Driscoll and Kieran Rodd, but a wider scale here from a lot of the Euro Titans drivers we've noticed in the last couple of months, and that is a back row bandit spree. He's going from the back of the field here, looking to try and start things down in 26th, but he's not alone in that one. Tom Barlow hasn't yet got out onto the track, neither has Lewis Purslow, and neither has that of Wayne Trigg. Number 28 peels into the pit lane, so we are seeing here the quick decay of the session with rain hitting the track. We didn't have it on the cards there for a spell of rain. Right now, that's going to clear out in the next 10 minutes, but that has put a serious hamper on any further progress from the field right now. It locks in Carlos Disch for pole position, and Declan Anderson still out on track during this time, soldiering on through to try and find himself ever closer to the number 54 as he crosses the line there. As it would stand, no dice. That gap having just been recently brought up as Deesh peels out of qualifying to just shy of 0.8 of a second between Anderson and Deesh. We see many drivers now filling into the pit lane. See for both Timo and Mr. Bernie, the twin BMWs there from the scope of bronze and gold now into the pit lane. Number 208 is still out on track. Will Friedman is adamant to see an improvement to the top 5. Across the line he goes. And as it stands there, up to the top 5. And that, I think, yes, is primarily because there's been a disconnect up in front. The 55 of Fake Galaxy appears to have suffered somewhat of a disconnect. Now, there is a silver lining to this. If he can rejoin the session in the next 10 minutes, it's going to be a case where he'll hold on to the time that he originally set. And will start, as it would stand right now, in 3rd place, where he originally qualified. 222 nearest to the line here. Thomas Pumerol in the silver division, currently division 5th and 14th overall. Across the line he goes from 14th place and stays there for the time being. It is a strange state of affairs emerging amongst this grid right now. We see for Declan Anderson going out on a sighting lap with Ferrari amidst the growing concern of wet conditions befalling this session right now. Track conditions are damp and look to stay that way. With the chances for it to clear within the next 10 minutes, that has effectively killed off a lot of the momentum carried in through this session start. Just as we hit past the midway of qualifying, the grid falls ever closer to full silence. Now, there are still a few drivers soldiering this through by the end of this session. We do see, in the case here of 2 drivers in particular, watching here with Callum Gray, who peels out down at Ascari to allow Will Friedman to come soaring on through. But you see there, even for the 208, big locks of oversteer from him down at Ascari. There's clearly no grip to be found left in Ascari. And the gap, have a glance there between himself and Lee Evans for control of the first of the 3rd row drivers. 6th place as it would stand. 2 thousandths between the pair. And then you look up in front to a top 5. And Friedman only has to find 8 thousandths to go up to the top 5, dethroning Chris Davies. Across the line he goes. I should say it was the back end of the 3rd row, not the top end. Though there is still that argument for a fight there when you consider the 8,000th gap between Davies and Friedman. 8.5 minutes left to go. Wet weather here to stay, as it would appear. That quickly descended on track. We didn't expect that one on the run in towards today. There were the hopes that there was going to be no further runoff from the recent weather cycle out of free practice. But as it would appear, swinging back in then is the wet conditions that befell the start of this session here in round 7. And that has done quite serious damage, I'd say, to the grid for qualifying. Because it's worth pointing out you have 4 cars here within 58 thousandths of a second to one another. That comprises Galaxy, Bernie, Davies and Friedman from 3rd through to 6th. And then when you consider Evans as part of that fray, you now have 0.06 of a second dividing 5 cars just outside of the front row. That comprises the 2nd row, the 3rd row, and then just the first half of the 4th row with Evans in 7th. Speaking of, the number 44 resting in the pit lane for the time being. We do just see there some movement in front of him. Was that? Yes, it was for Callum Gray as he makes his way out onto the field. Seeing here with the silver. Number 53 on his way out. We see there just lapping out past him. The number looking there, that is the number 23 of Tom Barlow in the gold category. Still lapping the track, having yet to have set a time in this session. And he will be finding himself quite a far cry from the top 10, as it would appear, in wet conditions, where he's still yet to have set a time. For Barlow, this is going to be a rather difficult session to follow. Number 208 approaches the line here. Will Friedman from 6th stays there. I mean, it's worth noting how close the gap is for him to start on that podium. 58 thousandths. We do just see the rain start to subside, but 6.5 minutes. I think the damage, even in that very brief spell of rain, has already been done. And that's going to kill off a lot of chances here for drivers to advance from where they are. That opening flurry in the first 10 or so minutes of qualifying is really, it's been the closest thing we've had then to a one-shot quali in that sense, because the drivers have had very little time to get themselves prepared. They come out of incredibly wet conditions into perfectly dry, useful conditions for qualifying, and then that's been snatched away from them there with that brief spell of rain. You can see the rooster tailing there up from behind the 208 Mustang. There's still plenty of water on the surface of that track. Just under 6 minutes left to go in the session then, and a very sudden turn. Ford dominance looking to strike here in Monza. I'd say all hope is not yet lost for Ferrari and BMW. They find themselves as part of that top 5 as well, courtesy of Anderson in 2nd place, Bernie in 4th, and Davies in 5th. Currently on the 1st and 3rd step of the podium is Deesh and Galaxy with Ford. It's worth noting that in the right hands, that Ferrari can do close to the Ford's top end, but it's going to be a difficult one nonetheless here for Declan Anderson, returning to the series. The only thing I can imagine right now for Alan Alexander, a driver who is by his own volition, as it appears, starting from the back of this field, or at least as far close to the back as he can. As far close, that makes no sense. As close as he can to the back of the grid. As it stands, though, he does have some competition on this one, courtesy of Barlow, Agaverdi, Perslow, and Trigg. It's worth noting, though, Wayne Trigg is lapping the track in the number 29 Ferrari. He's making his way down through the Curva de Saraglio as we speak. We have 4 cars here stranded without a time, one of which making efforts to make that time onto the chart. Here with the 29 down through Ascari. It's worth noting here, Will Friedman there taking the runoff down at turn 1 of the Variante Rettifilo. Up in front of him is Fake Galaxy. Galaxy, as it would appear, going for a sighting lap in the number 55, but I think I might know what they're planning on here. We see also lapping the track another Ford here, that being Antonio Angeletta, standing atop the timing charts for the silver division, ahead of McNally and Aquati for the silver podium start. In terms of the golds, it's Anderson, Bernie, and Davies, and platinum, it's Deesh, Galaxy, and Friedman. For the bronze drivers, the podium currently looking at 12th, 17th, and 18th overall on the grid. That's Mantas Mantinho, Peter Michaelis, and Ryan Castle. It's worth noting there, between Michaelis and Castle, a gap of only 3 thousandths of a second over the course of this qualifying session. 3.5 minutes left to go. We see they're just stranded off at the side of the road there at turn 11. Now back into the pit lane. That was the 53, if I'm not mistaken. That was Callum Gray in the silvers. Number 21, not number 21, number 53, 21st on this grid. We see for Galaxy, whether he means to or not, this does look a little deliberate when you consider 58 thousandths is all that Friedman would need to put Ford onto another position of the top 5. Moreover, 58 thousandths is all he would need to put Ford on to, well, replace a Ford on the podium, as it would stand here. And it does look to be the case out through turn 11. Bay Galaxy is going to be giving quite a hefty bit of slipstream here to Will Friedman. You've seen strategies done like this before in motorsports, but that's often been amongst teammates. You'd think, looking at this on paper, there'd be no reason for these two drivers to ever want to work together. One's from Exclusive Esports, the other's from Euro Titans. They are, by their very definition, rivals in this scene. As it would appear, both the Mustangs taking a sighting lap as track conditions remain at damp for the time being. It's worth noting we spoke briefly on the rooster tailing from the 208. Have a glance here in the same sector. We spoke of that before. You can see far less of it because a lot of that standing water has now been pushed away to the sides of the track from the lapping cars. Teammates in 2 different leagues. Oh, that's news to me. I never knew that Friedman and Galaxy were working together on other projects. We seen for the longest time was the case here, where Galaxy, after his recent move from 5-star over towards Euro Titans, had never seemingly crossed paths as teammates with Friedman, at least on our coverage on a few different series. Of course, if that is a case where something's going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, then that is definitely the first we hear of it. We do see, though, still holding on, Friedman to the back end of Galaxy. down towards turn 11 then. We'll see whether or not this has worked out for Will Friedman on his way out through the Curva Parabolica. Needed only 2 thousandths to go to the top 5, so as a minute draws in now to the end of this session, Galaxy across the line from 3rd, stays there. Friedman across the line and couldn't find that 2 thousandths necessary for a move up to 5th. And having lost a lot of distance there, won't be seeing anywhere near as much advantage under the slipstream from Galaxy heading into his last lap of this qualifying session. Seeing here with Declan Anderson as he makes his way back onto the track. Now, bear in mind, he's just shy of 8 tenths away from the fastest lap. And right now, with conditions as they are, I don't see it likely he'll be finding his way up towards pole position. But of course, never say never on the prospect of the number 9 Ferrari. Down towards the line then to begin his last flying lap of the session. We'll catch on with him when that lap runs up. Nearest to the line, though, number 53. Back out on track here, Callum Gray. Behind him, the number 29. The end of qualifying then, so Gray's on to one more flying lap. Number 23 approaches the line. That'll be for Barlow. And across the line there, Tom Barlow, sadly without a time at the end of this session. Looks to start at the very best of times here, 24th. Number 504 across the line a moment ago. Timo, 20th in the session at the end of qualifying today. Nearest is the one looking here, I believe 196. So yes, that is from Mr. Bernie in the gold division. Currently ranking in division 2nd on the grid right now. And 4th overall as he rounds turn 11 down to the line. Can he make his way onto a podium here? Not too far off a shout of it. Down to the line he goes. Across the line there, no dice. Getting a look in here with a 55 up in front of him. Looks to be having a quick glance at it there. That is, yes, that is Julian Aquati with Porsche. Down towards the line. Aquati from 3rd in division across the line. Stays there at the end of the session. Same story for Galaxy, who stays on the podium for the overall grid, but 2nd in the Platinums. Number 717 approaches the line at the end of this session. That would be for, looking here, Parvis Agaverde. Into the pit lane he goes. So the end of this session, after mixed conditions playing out through qualifying today, Carlos Disch on pole position. On his return to the series then, Declan Anderson marks a 2nd place spot. We see him here on the end of his flying lap, the last of the flying laps for this session. Down to the line comes the number 9. Down through turn 11. And sadly, that'll be exactly where he stays, down to the 1,000th there. 798 thousandths away. But a great hustle to return to the grid here, leading the golds in towards round 7 and starting on the front row. It'll be Ford versus Ferrari for the run up towards the Variante Rettifilo here in Monza. Nearest to the line then, as we saw from earlier on, Tom Barlow on his in-lap with Ferrari, number 504, behind him being Timo, who rather peculiarly we didn't see at the checkered flag, but as the session draws in now, we see that that was his last lap just gone a moment ago. So 20th for Timo at the end of this session. Having a look back up the front then, Disch on pole for the Platinums. In the golds, it's Anderson. In the silvers, it's Angeletta. And in the bronze, it's Mantinho. We'll get a full look at the grid in just a moment's time then, after what has been a very bizarre qualifying here in the Temple of Speed. So, taking a look in towards the news segment before we get on to the grid read for today, we have further updates from a developing story in the World Rally Championship. Of course, we spoke in the last couple of weeks about Toyota's testing car for 2027. Well, a 2nd unique model has been spotted testing in Spain after the recent test for their very bizarre coupe-styled World Rally car that is alleged to appear next year in the World Rally Championship. We've seen testing in Portugal and in Croatia. Now we've seen this one emerge in Spain, and it looks very close now to the already existing GR Yaris Rally 1, save for quite a few changes there. For example, the car has broadly different proportions to the current existing Rally 1. It's a lot more, well, I'd say authentic to the road car, and that's because part of the new regulations is closer adherence to Rally 2 specifications, which do use actual cars as opposed to the silhouette cars that Rally 1 currently uses for the time being. This one still looks roughly onto the edge of being a coupe style body. Of course, it is still a hatchback, and that's thanks in part to the GR Yaris's design, giving it a very slanted roof, almost closer to something you'd see on, say, for example, a Volkswagen Scirocco would be a great example for that, giving it this very rounded back end. The front fascia and rear fascia gives us all the information we need to tell you that this is a Yaris they're testing. This current mule car has been testing over in Spain. As we know right now, that coupe style car we've been seeing in Portugal and Croatia will continue to be tested alongside this one until the end of the year. Toyota's still yet to have made a final decision on what their 2027 World Rally car will look like. Reeling away from the news, more news from the grid. Rainy conditions back in for the race start here in round 7 at Monza. Taking a look at that grid, then Carlos Disch on pole position, Declan Anderson in second with Fake Galaxy in third, Mr. Bernie in fourth with Chris Davies in fifth place, Will Friedman in sixth with Lee Evans in seventh, Ian Oates in eighth, Antonio Angeletta in ninth, and Sean McNally in the top 10. Julian Aquati in 11th place with Mantas Mantinho in 12th, Andres Tishavari in 13th with Stefan Nicolai in 14th. Thomas Pumerol in 15th with Robert Ogan in 16th, Peter Mikolas in 17th with Ryan Castle 18th, Old Dollarup in 19th, and Timo rounds out the top 20. Callum Gray in 21st with Wayne Trigg in 22nd, Alan Alexander in 23rd, Tom Barlow in 24th, Parvis Agaverdi in 25th, and Lewis Purslow rounds out the 26th and final position of this grid. 13 cars on either side of it for the start of round 7 today. 2 minutes until we get on to that formation lap. Your leaders by division for the race start: for platinum, Carlos Disch; for gold, Declan Anderson; for silver, Antonio Angeletta; and for bronze, Mantas Mantinho. Key players to watch out for here. Anderson on what has been a stark return to the series. We've not seen him so far here in season 11, but having returned to VSR after a bit of a hiatus after season 10, Anderson back on the grid in the number 9. Had a great qualifying session, was the only driver there to be within a second of the fastest time set by Carlos Disch at the time. Fake Galaxy, it's worth keeping an eye on there, because not long ago did he go onto a hot streak of race wins, round 4 and 5. And of course, who could forget last season when he went 4 on the trot to the season finale. In terms of those golds, keeping a close eye once again to Anderson, who leads by category, but keeping an eye there for Mr. Bernie, now ranking in at second and ahead of Chris Davies. When it comes to vehicles, definitely worth keeping an eye out there for some of the German options: BMW, Mercedes, and I would say chiefly Porsche. Porsche have proven themselves to be real aces in the wet. We'll see what Aquati can make of things down in 11th. Also worth keeping an eye on there, trying his very hardest to be a back row bandit in spirit. Alan Alexander starts 23rd with 3 cars behind him with the Porsche 991. We've seen, though, for Alexander, wet weather is his forte. We've seen him take wins before with Porsche in wet conditions, albeit that was the 992. We'll see what he can do a generation down here in the 991. More onto that, though, when we get racing here in Monza. To remind you of what's coming up around the corner, this was according to the calendar, an hour and 30 minutes of racing to follow here in wet conditions. A single mandatory pit stop for both fuel and tyres in terms of strategy today. So this is going to be a very tough one for the drivers. They'll be trying to split this down into 2 45-minute stints over the course of today's race. Our current predictions then for pit stops, we're going to be seeing them, I would say, even shy of the 45-minute mark. We could be seeing them around 47, 48 minutes left to go in the race. Wet races often do bring out earlier, more hesitant strategies. We'll see, though. Pulling away for the start of the formation lap, Carlos Disch and Declan Anderson on that front row, joining them behind Fake Galaxy and Mr. Bernie. 2 golds and 2 platinums in the first 2 rows of the grid. This ought to be an interesting one on the run-up towards Rettifilo. Major overtaking spots are plenty here in Monza. The Variante Rettifilo is a who dares win situation on the run down towards turn 1. Those who want to risk it can absolutely go for it, but it's going to be a coin toss on whether or not they emerge with the position in hand or facing the wrong way. Other overtaking opportunities look down to Della Rosia, the follow-up act here from Rettifilo as we come around the Curva Grande. That gives drivers yet another opportunity to build up some momentum and get down onto the brakes later than their contemporaries for the run up towards turns 4 and 5. The Curva de Lesmo doesn't offer much in the way of direct overtaking opportunities. It'll be more on the exit of turn 7 where we see our opportunities come up, as a good exit from turn 7 gives the drivers the necessary run down the Curva de Seraglio for a run into Ascari, where they could then go for a leap on the inside. Recent news from the paddock there, as it would appear, Will Friedman starting from the pit lane. With connection troubles on the grid at the moment, there are some fears, and the 208 peels out of this race before it has even started. Other overtaking opportunities, the run in towards Curva Parabolica, and of course the opening straight for those inclined with Ford today. Though it's worth keeping an eye out for BMW on this grid. Taking a look there, just a few cars down to Mr. Bernie starting in 4th place. Worth keeping an eye there on that M4 because it's one of the only machines here capable of standing 10 toes next to Ford. We see now reconnecting to the field Will Friedman and Parvis Agaverdi. 2 drivers beset by connection troubles there. Friedman back into this race, but starts now from the pit lane. Same story for Agaverdi, though, as it would appear for neither of these two was by their own volition. Down through the Curva de Lesmo. Turn 7 onto the Curva del Saraglio. Now, what's interesting about this track, much like another track that we visited before, the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, the start and finish lines find themselves on 2 separate ends of a same section of the track, though maybe not to the same extremes as we've seen for Spa, where they start around the corner of La Source in towards turn 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the run up through Eau Rouge and Raidillon. Here in Monza, the finish line is a full grid length behind the start line. There's not really a start-finish line as there would be. There's a start line and a finish line. They're 2 distinct elements of the track. Making our way then down towards the Curva Parabolica. It is a dreaded sight, rain on Monza, but we'll see what the drivers can make of it in today's event. VSR Season 11 so far has been a fantastic season to watch from our point of view, and now this is only about to get sweeter with the advent of wet racing here in the Temple of Speed. Making our way down towards turn 11 as the grid process begins. 26 drivers in today's race. What would have been 13 on either side of which, actually, as it does appear, will be 12 on either side of which, and 2 from the pit lane. Down to the line we go then. Here at turn 11 at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. An hour and a half's worth of racing, 90 minutes of madness here in a very, very wet Monza. Down to the line then, we watch here with Carlos Disch and Declan Anderson from the front row of this grid as we see going down to the line. 12 cars on either side of which, 24 on the track, 2 from the pit lane here for Season 11, Round 7 of VSR. Down to the line here in the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. We're green and racing here in Italy, and a great start from that of Carlos Disch, as well as that you can see from Fake Galaxy, as the 2 Fords from the first and second row go barreling up alongside the Ferrari of Declan Anderson. We see following in their wake is Mr. Bernie, but a great distance behind before we get down to the first braking zone here at the Variante Rettifilo. There will be blood in this section, and we see it spilled already there. Mr. Bernie turned around, and it creates a huge cascade of cars down through turns 1 and 2. We just knew that one was going to happen. Having a look back in on the replay as we catch back up with the race leaders up at the front of the field. A very tough start indeed already down at turns 1 and 2. We saw during that time was a good defense by Anderson against Fake Galaxy. We see on the live footage though, now he's up past. Cutting back onto the footage here to see down through Della Rosia, we see from Davies' point of view, looking back down the field, we see more trouble down the way, as now turned into the wall was the 555, as well as one of the Mercedes cars we saw down the order. Looking in here, no, it was the 555, it was Stefan Nicolai. You see in behind him Will Friedman and Callum Gray having made their starts at the race. Of course, started from the pit lane. We see here for Carlos Disch and Fake Galaxy now leading in a Ford 1-2 here in Monza. Declan Anderson still leads in gold, but now drops to 3rd overall in this race. Chris Davies in hot pursuit. It could be 2 Ferraris at the front of the field for the gold here, and so it would appear, had it not been for the case of Ian Oates giving rise to a challenge here for 2nd place in the gold division. He's currently 5th, fighting for an outright 4th. Behind him, Angeletta in 6th, Bernie 7th, Aquati in 8th. You can see in the case here, looks to be the case where Julian Aquati, yes, is side by side with Mr. Bernie on the run up towards turn 11. At the Curva Parabolica, in behind them we see Lee Evans in 9th place. Peter Mikolas now leads in bronze, rounding out that top 10. In behind him, Tishavari, Pumarol and Ogan. We see here very close fighting between these 2 silver drivers. This is for 4th in division, 12th on track. Aston Martin versus Ferrari. We see here Alan Alexander had a world-class start, now already to 12th place. We see here with the Porsche, number 3, down through to Rettifilo. Having a look up the way here to see what's going on with the top three. We see they start to spread out massively, and it's definitely the case here between the two leading Mustangs as Carlos Dish puts a full second up over Fake Galaxy, and that gap looks certainly larger as we see the intervals now, 1.4 seconds as it stands. That's double the gap that Galaxy has to Anderson at this time, with the Ferrari still clinging on to the back end of the number 55. Looking in here to see Evans versus Aquati in progress. We see behind as well is Peter Mikolas in 10th place. Behind him looks to be that of Andres Tishavari. We see Alan Alexander having already got up and ahead of him. That number 3 is on a move here. I mean, he is not slowing down for anybody for love nor money. Hell or high water will not stop the advance. That number 3. It's been a stellar start then for that of Alan Alexander, the wet weather wizard, as it's been. We've seen his work over in Kyalami. Now we see it here today. We see in the background running out wide there was Robert Ogan. Now drops down in behind that of Andres Tishavari. Trouble for him there over the run of turn 7. Seeing here with Mr. Bernie fighting with Antonio Angeletta. Behind him, Julian Aquati. So he's got two of the leading silver cars at his front and rear here from 7th place on the track. Lee Evans chimes in behind Aquati. We see for Mikolas now being intercepted by Alan Alexander. I never thought I'd see the like here. We said that it could have been a strong start in the works here for Alan Alexander. I was not expecting this, as now chiming in down at turn 11, side by side with Mikolas on the run down through the apex of the Curva Parabolica. Now on the exit as we get onto the opening straight, there is the chances here within the first 5 minutes of racing that Alan Alexander, having started down towards the back end of the field, could be in for a top 10. And as it would appear here, dreams are soon to become reality. A fight on 6 cylinders here, V6 versus flat 6, down towards turn 1, later onto the brakes here. He's going to risk it all for that move up the inside. We see up in front of him, following in tandem, a move between Aquati and Evans as Alexander is forced to cut the Variante Rettifilo. But push comes to shove, he's got hold of 10th place and could be within a shot already of 8th. We see behind Thomas Pumerol closing in on Peter Mikolas. Very close now to the back end of that number 11, the 222 in pursuits. Meanwhile, in conversation of the front row fight, now 2.4 seconds apart from one another. That's dead in the water between Dish and Galaxy. Anderson now a full second behind Galaxy in 3rd. It's going to be a long day there for Ferrari, and we're seeing it played out here just shy of the top 10 between Mikolas and Pumerol. In terms of some of the closest fights we're seeing on track, this is one among them. Seeing them down through the Curva de Saraglio, looking to get on board then with some of these drivers. So we see here with Ian Oates fighting with Chris Davies for 4th. As that stands, this is a fight for 2nd place in the gold division, making his way down towards turn 11. Barely visible there, obscured by the rooster tailing, as the Ferrari of 2-time VSR champion Chris Davies. Ian Oates looking for a possible chance here to contend. Looking back through the history of this series to see previous champions as we do get further and further into that second half of the season proper. It started off strong at round 6, and we see a great follow-up here at turn 7. Oates looking for his chance to become division champion here in season 11. Right now it's a case where he can't fight what he can't see, and 0.7 of a second in front of him, evidently far enough to obscure himself from sight. Chris Davies holds on to 4th place. Recent troubles down at turn 11. We do see here the yellow flags are out, watching from Callum Gray's point of view to see the aftermath of what's gone on there for the 504 of Timo, who is back out since on track. We're back in the green flag conditions after what has nearly been a full 10 minutes of racing here in Monza. Taking a look on board with Oates versus Davies. Very quickly here, one of the progressing fights among the top 10. We also see here on the rise is Angeletta versus Bernie. Angeletta defending, Bernie attacking. Behind him, we see Lee Evans. Behind him, a fight among 2 Porsches, Aquati versus Alexander. We'll get a look in with these two in just a moment's time. Looking in here, Stefan Nikolai trying his luck to go on the inside of Ryan Castle. We see there, yellow flags out in front because that's Andres Tishavari stranded off of turn 6. Seeing here with the onboard from the 555 down through turn 7, can barely see Castle in front of him. That's concerning given just how close these two are to one another. Looking on the external cameras, they are practically neck and neck. Down through the curve to Saraglio, looking for the inside at Ascari. Castle versus Nikolai for contention of 16th place. Down towards Ascari we go. McLaren falls in behind Mercedes. Mercedes takes hold of that 16th place spot. We see behind them is Will Friedman, who started toward the pit lane for this race. Out through Ascari. Great move there by Nikolai. We see here for Oates versus Davies once again. Down the opening straight. In the last lap there, faster of the two was Ian Oates. Fighting here with Chris Davies for 4th place, division 2nd for the Gold drivers. Watching on board of that Mercedes once again gives us much of the same story here. He just simply can't make out the image of that Ferrari, so it's very difficult to attack for something you can't really make out the corners for, especially in a car as wide as the AMG. Looking further around the field to see more progressing fights we've seen in the time since that Alan Alexander has now gone up past that of Lee Evans. We see out wide, though, goes Julian Aquati. Looks to be trouble there for that 69. He rejoins the track safe and sound. We have seen also recent trouble there for the 53. That, as we just have got wind of it there, was for Callum Gray, who has now retired from this race. Looking in here with Evans, as he sets his sights on Mr. Bernie in front. He does have a rapidly approaching problem in his rearview mirror, and it takes the shape of a Porsche 911. It's Alan Alexander, who has been on absolute wonder kid form here in Monza. Started toward the back, now currently 9th, and I dare believe it here, he's fighting for 8th. More trouble, the 555. Stefan Nikolai turned around at Della Roja. That's the 2nd time it's happened for him. Off in the background there, that's Mikulas. Off into the gravel, off the exit of turn 7. Get a look at this on the replays as we stay on board here with Evans versus Alexander. Off in the background, that was your bronze leader, Peter Mikulas, with Ferrari, now facing the wrong way off of turn 7. So we're told he's got back up and running, and we've caught back with these two just in time to see Alan Alexander go side by side here with Lee Evans. Evans for the inside, Alexander to the outside. A battle between two German juggernauts at AMG and Porsche. Down through to the Curva Parabolica, holding the inside. The 44 retakes ground of 8th, but having a lot of momentum to his aid there was Alexander. Where's he gone? Where has Alan Alexander gone? That is the worst time for him to have a disconnect. And I believe that has been the case of what's happened there for Alexander. That is gut-wrenching. I'll be so honest, that is gut-wrenching, given the drive that he's had so far. The opening 10 minutes, the man was in, I mean, touching range of an 8th place spot. This game, it couldn't be further gone for him. 1.3 seconds then between Evans and Bernie as we take back up to the conversation of a fight in the gold category. Taking a look at things so far after 10 minutes of racing, Carlos Disch leads over Fate Galaxy. You see the twin Fords at the front of the field there, 1st and 2nd. Anderson, 3rd place at the moment. We see here with Davies in 4th, Oates behind him in 5th. A possible fight still on the cards here for 4th place, and that'll be 2nd in division. Taking a look with Angeletta, there's trouble there for Mr. Bernie, now stranded at the Curva de Lesmo, forced to reverse at turn 6. He's stranded for his efforts to get back on track for Bernie. That is catastrophic. Joining them there from behind is the car in 12th place, now 11th, Lewis Perslow. Mr. Bernie being removed from the equation. That's great news for Evans as it stands. He was trying his hardest there to catch up to the BMW. Now seeing one less issue in front of him, he can move up to 7th place, but that's come at the chagrin then of the 196. Mr. Bernie, who had a brilliant return to this series after this drive-in with BMW. I say return to the series because for whatever reason for this round, his data wasn't able to be accessed on the championship standings. That gave to us the suggestion he had possibly left, but we can see here quite the contrary. An hour and 18 minutes left to go, and he's onto the grass there. Mr. Bernie about to hit the wall and hits the wall. Out of turn, looking there, turn 10 into turn 11. What on earth happened for him? Did he just catch the grass on his rear right? I think it was the case here. Having a look, yes, it was. Off the exit of turn 10, just tucked a little too far in there on the right-hand side into the grass. Has caught the rear right wheel, one of the driven wheels of the car, and that's pirouetted him in his efforts to turn away. The car's been sucked into the grass. That's what sent him out sideways. by the time he hit the wall. We see now with Will Friedman hassling him for 13th place. It's been a tough race so far then for this one. It's been a series of unfortunate events, one after the other for the 196. Up in front of him, we see there Tom Barlow. Now moving to the last of the top 5 positions for gold. Will Friedman looking to have a go here for 13th place. It's worth noting, much like Alexander, Friedman started towards the back of this field, albeit a pit lane start for that 208 to see himself now into the top 15 before the first quarter hour is out on this race. Off the exit of De La Rogia, conditions worsening by the second, so we're told the rain set to pick up within, looking here, the next 10 or so minutes. You can see conditions at some of their worst for Monza. If you've ever wondered why they... Oh, into the wall again, the 196. I mean, how many times is that BMW going to take a beating? I think this one's done in the steering. You could barely see him out past the scoreboard there, but that looks to be possibly a race-ending one there for Mr. Bernie. I would not be too surprised. We see him there pivot back into the wall. That M4, his goose is cooked. As you see there, clatters the cameras. Down towards Ascari. I mean, that BMW is fried. You can see the steering system's completely kaput there into the tyre wall. Off of Ascari. Eh? Hang on, did that fix it? No, wait, hang on just a second. Okay. I'm not laughing at his misfortune. Don't get that twisted. But watch this. Look, look, look. Very damaged BMW. Comes into the wall. Clatters it. Re-emerges. It's brand new. We want to hit the wall of instant repairs. I mean, I'm not sure what's gone on there for him. Regardless, his steering system is still broken, and now we can see a lot more close to what it originally looked like here for Bernie. And in another wall, I mean, he just can't control the car. Rear aeros kaput, front aeros kaput, steering racks kaput. You can see their brake lights are on the blink as well. We see approaching him from behind, having actually spun around himself there. That was Andres Tijavari in the 87. Track conditions here are borderline impossible. That's a stylish re-entry. I'll give him that as well for Tijavari. Just spun that one around, got back up and going. We see for Bernie now mercifully having made his way towards the pits. That is a dire state of affairs for that BMW. I've never seen a car take this much of a pounding here in Monza. It is a miracle, I'd say, that he's managed to get that one back into the pit box. He's going to have a long stay in the pits ahead of him, but still an hour and looking here just under 15 minutes of racing left to play for. First 15 minutes have been a very rough one for that 196. We see he's not the only one with problems for stability. The number 6 there, Ian Oates, had a bit of a slide out through the Variante Ascari. These conditions here are incredibly tough to manage for some. We're seeing that is starting to be a growing number of drivers facing all the same issues here down through to turn 11. We see for Davies and Oates, Davies ran all the way out wide at turn 11. Just no grip to be found there. It's a pool of standing water. So it makes you wonder, with 20 kilos on board under balance of performance, has Ford accidentally been given the best possible advantage for a race like this? They've got more weight holding them to the ground here. They've got more weight, which means a little bit more mass to push through the water, giving them a marginally better chance to ford more water over the other drivers who are losing weight for this race. This is quite a confusing state of affairs here as we continue to see conditions worsen up here in Monza. Now, there is some respite to be found in the next 30 minutes. It'll go back to the rain that sort of started this race off. As we see right now, it is torrential conditions here in Monza. I'd not be too surprised if the conditions got any worse than this. There'd be considerations by race control on a red flag, and that'd be the first we'd ever seen it for extreme weather. As we're seeing for quite a few drivers, the case where there's just no grip to be found, and it's getting on a point here that is almost race ending. 196 is still in the pit lane, so we understand right now. Extensive repairs for that BMW for Mr. Bernie. Meanwhile, we see here in the fight for the bronze lead, Ryan Castle and Peter Mikulas head-to-head here. We saw, of course, Mikulas ran out wide and spun down at the Curva de Lesmo a few laps ago. Now fights alongside the 77, and has that been another disconnect? No, not the case here for Mikulas, but there is a bit of instability server-wise. So we've had a few issues there with driver connection staying reliably on board, but then we see here in the case of that number 11, we have seen in the time since, though, he's up and ahead of Ryan Castle and back into the lead of the bronze division. We see here Aquati versus Evans. The Porsche we spoke of before is a serious track weapon when it comes to wet racing, and one that you wouldn't expect it to be given its track record for stability concerned in the dry. We see here for Lee Evans, a driver who's not afraid of a good fight here on this grid. Now facing one down from the Porsche of Julian Aquati. Division second for the Silvers, with Evans at the moment standing in the gold category division 4th and 7th overall. A very tough state of affairs then to have laid over the track in the first 20 minutes of racing here in Monza. And taking a look back around the field to see more fights in the works. We see here for Michaelis now versus Sean McNally, as the Ferrari is back on flying form. Now into 15th, up and ahead. I should say that was not McNally. No, that was Nikolai. He just got out past. So very bizarre state of affairs there. We see the Mercedes back on the run. McNally, I should point out, is 5.4 seconds up the road. So that's totally wrong on our end. It is another Mercedes, though. We see there Stefan Nikolai gets up past Ryan Castle, now sets his sights on Peter Michaelis. He moves to 15th place recently there in the number 11. And obviously, it's going to be quite hard for us to make out anything on track here. He's had connection troubles into the wall. We could see that one, though. And collecting Stefan Nikolai and Ryan Castle out of the Curva Grande. A huge wipeout between these three. It was impossible to make out what happened from inside the car, as we had to cut away to see that, yes, he was aquaplaning from turn 3. The car was turning in way more than it needed to. There was no grip found there for the Ferrari. That took 3 drivers out in one go. We've noted as well that, yes, it was because of the lag that is the reason why he didn't have his wipers on. That wasn't a self-inflicted thing for him. We see another bout of trouble, this time for, as it appears here, Timo. In the 504, another BMW stranded out past turn 10. Continued troubles then in sector 3. We see, though, Timo looks likely to get the car started back up. There has been what I can only assume has been a pretty sizable wipeout there to stagger him for this long. He has got the car back up and going as he rolls slowly but surely along the side of the track here in towards turn 11. Watch here as he crosses back onto the Curva Parabolica. Just behind him is the number 29. Approaching there, that's Wayne Trigg. Getting up and around him at turn 11. And it does appear to be the case, a lot like another BMW to have found issues in this race, that being Mr. Burney. It could be a case where his steering system is also shot from the impact. So in towards the pit lane goes Timo. Green flags back out for the rest of the track. Looking back in with the progress on some more fights here. Oates versus Davies in that talks of 4th place. Let's go on board to find with them here. Ian Oates in pursuit of Chris Davies. This is for Division 2nd. And this has been a fight that's been very close between these two in the opening 21 minutes of racing here in Monza. Down towards the Variante Ascari. We have just got word of another incident. It's the number 11, Peter Michaelis, down at turn 11. And that, I believe, having a quick glance in, didn't intervene too greatly with the race leaders. Number 11, I'm told, is now into the pit lane. So Peter Michaelis, and what has been a disastrous last couple of laps for him, is now into the pits. An early pit stop for the number 11 Ferrari. You see for Ian Oates, he's been struggling to maintain pace with Chris Davies. There's just no grip for that Mercedes to harness on this track. In that last lap, 22 thousandths off of Davies' track time there. 138.372 to a, not 138, 158.372 to a 158.350. Down through Rettifilo. The wipers on these cars working overtime. Here as conditions continue to batter the track. I'd say we're not too far off considering this flooded conditions we see here for Robert Hogan in 10th place in the race. Getting onto the brakes, the Aston Martin fidgeting there under the brakes, pivoting in a straight line. That was a scary thing to see. You don't often get that on modern race cars. That's something you'd see back in the Group C days. The cars would twitch and fuss under the brakes and fight the driver down through these heavy braking zones. That's how little grip there is at play here on what are normally laser precise GT3s. We see for Anderson, it's lonely at the top of gold, 9 seconds in the lead of the gold division, 3rd overall in this race behind the 2 leading Mustangs, who it's worth noting are getting closer to one another. We check in once again to the fight of gold's division 2nd, and overall 4th fight of the field here, 0.3 of a second now apart from Ian Oates, and we see here from Chris Davies the defending point of view, down through to the Variante Ascari, down to turn 8, 9 and 10. Davies, who not long ago here in Italy last week stood atop the podium for the gold division fight and won for the first time this season in gold at Misano, right now stands in division 2nd for a Ferrari 1-2 in gold. And having just watched in with him there, it's gone on for the dogs, we'll check in on that in a second. Having checked in for the time being, has opened the gaps up massively over Oates. We'll be back in a moment. Oh, apologies there for the interruption. Back in with Chris Davies on his way down through the looking here, the Curva de Lesmo. We see in the background again caught out is Peter Mikolas. Man simply seems to not be able to catch a break here down at turn 7. So, as it stands then, 25 minutes into this race, and into the wall once again goes Mikolas. What on earth is happening here? There's no grip at the Curva de Saraglio. Drivers dropping like flies here. The number 11, the latest victim, down on the run in towards turns 8, 9 and 10. Meanwhile, going on at the same time of this, albeit down at the Curva Grande, the number 29, Wayne Trigg, off track at turn 3. Approaching him from behind, Ryan Castle zips on by there to move up a position in bronze and overall to 17th. Looking in to find some of the nearest fights to us. Purslow v Friedman. We see with Friedman having recently made that move up over Purslow. Purslow sizing up chances for counter-attack, but like we've seen in the Oates v Davies fight, you can't really attack what you can't see, and in the case here of Purslow, he could barely make out where that Ford is, but now descending upon him right as it could be too late here. Running very wide down at turn 11. Yet another victim as we see that twitching out through turn 11. The Mercedes of Purslow very nearly went into the wall. So taking a look, pardon me, into the session right now. After nearly 30 minutes of racing here in round 7 of season 11 of VSR, Carlos Teach leads over Fate Galaxy. The two now separate by only 1.6 seconds. So this is a rather curious footnote in their fight for the lead of both Platinum and the race lead itself. Declan Anderson makes 3rd place with Chris Davies in 4th, Ian Oates in 5th, Antonio Angeletta in 6th with Lee Evans in 7th, Julian Akwati in 8th place with Thomas Pumerol in 9th, Robert Ogan in 10th place with Will Friedman in 11th. Lewis Purslow now 12th place in this race with Tom Barlow 13th, Sean McNally in 14th, and Stefan Nicolai down to 15th. Old Dollar up in 16th with Ryan Castle in 17th, Wayne Trigg in 18th, Andres Tishavari in 19th, and Peter Mikulas in 20th. Been a very tough race here. Started with some 26 cars, 24 on track 2 from the pit lane, and now down at only 20. It has been a bloodbath here in round 7 in wet and wild conditions prevailing over the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. In terms of its nearest fights, there is one here for Castle v Trigg. And as that stands right now, this is for 2nd in the bronze division. Leading it right now is Old Dollar up. There's been so many twists and turns there in their fight. We've seen among the drivers to have fallen out of line in this race. Among them has been Mantas Mantinho, and we've seen recently after taking the lead away from Mantinho has been Mikulas. Looking in here at Akwati v Evans, 1.3 seconds at the last interval. Across they go into the next 1.9, so up 6 tenths. As Evans sets his sights on Angeletta. Looking back in for Trigg v Castle. Ferrari versus McLaren onto the opening straight out from turn 11 at Parabolica. We see here for Trigg emerging alongside Castle, so it's side by side and a drag race down towards turn 1. It looks like Ferrari might have this one. Now getting up and ahead of McLaren. Castle drops down to 18th, Trigg up to 17th. Late onto the brakes there into Retafilo, but gets it tucked in time before the run of turns 1 and 2. Meanwhile, getting a glance in here at the gap emerging for Friedman v Ogan. At the last interval was about 9 seconds, then the one before it was around 11. As we see here, down towards Ascari, 8.5. So Friedman is rapidly catching up here to Robert Ogan. That would represent a move to the top 10 after starting from the pit lane of a 26-car grid. Right now, though, as we've seen for some of the more extreme examples of wet racing, it's a case where a lot of the fights after the first 30 minutes have started to dilute amidst the torrential... Oh my God, that jump. What on earth? Getting a look here on the replay. Just have a glance at this one. So it's already getting a bit dire from the leading pair as we see Carlos Diesch was forced to cut the run of things at Della Rosia. But have a glance in there with that of Fake Galaxy. That's quite funny. I don't know why. I do find that quite humorous indeed. I mean, just one more look. Just one more look. It's just watching this. So down through towards Della Rosia we go. Following on board, you know, he's forced to cut over. Then he gets hit. Just leaps up over the curbs. Oh my goodness. You've got to have fun somewhere. Now 2.9 seconds apart from one another because of their shenanigans. Galaxy maintains second. Diesch maintains the lead with the fastest lap. Looking in for the nearest fights, we see that Trigg v Castle has quickly filtered out. Now 2.1 seconds at their last interval before they round through turn 11. Emerging into a possible fight here, Pumerol versus Ogan. This is for Division 3rd, the last of the silver podiums between Aston Martin and Ferrari. We've seen Aston Martin to be a very capable brand when it comes to wet racing. We see right now in the hands of Ogan, he does have the chances to emerge on the podium in silver by the end of this race. 58.5 minutes coming up on left to go here in Monza on what has been a very difficult race for many. We see that things haven't got any sweeter at the front of the field there for Diesch v Galaxy, now from 2.9 to 3 seconds between the pair as they round the Variante Retafilo. For Anderson, he's still 12.7 seconds behind. Ian Oates having just crossed the line, 15 seconds away from Anderson at the lead of gold. We do see here, and it's worth noting, the nearest gap to any two drivers, Akwati v Evans. We see here trouble for Purslow. And this is down through to turn 11. Another driver caught on the back straight here. down through into turn 11. Now damage for Perslow, as it will likely be a case here that he comes into the pits. We'll see if that is his official judgment of the matter. No, he's electing to stay up. You can see just how much that Mercedes is fidgeting on the opening straight. Just can't really find the room for a dry line. There is one out there if you squint hard enough. There is so much standing water running up towards turn 11 and also down here into turn 1. We see forced to cut over Retafilo. There was Friedman. And this has now become less a case of fighting with your fellow drivers. You're fighting against Mother Nature herself, and she is winning as far as we're concerned. After the first 30 minutes, 6 cars out of this race of a 26-car grid. See 8 seconds between Anderson and Deesh. As it is worth noting, actually, hang on, yes, having a look in here. Carlos Deesh, in the time since, has now dropped off the leading position by 4.3 seconds. Fake Galaxy leads in Monza. When did this happen? Between the 55 and the 54. Amidst the wet and wild conditions, it has also brought Anderson back into the equation, less than 10 seconds away. Looking on with Deesh's number 54. It's worth pointing out here, it's very likely a case where he's either suffered some kind of spin or has been forced to cut part of the track. So right now, the 54 doesn't appear to exhibit any signs of damage. So it can't be a case where he's crashed, but a spin is definitely on the cards. We see recently there, Thomas Pumerol drops in behind Robert Ogan. The Aston Martin now up to 3rd in silver. So just as we thought things would start quieting down, with 10 minutes to go before the mass infill of the pits expected to see here at the halfway mark, we see already going in is Perslow with his damaged Mercedes into the pit lane in the 32. Things are starting to hot back up here in Monza, down through turn 3. It does appear to be the case here, having a glance in with Aquati. Having a look here to see that right up in front of him is that of Peter Mikulis, lapping out past the former bronze lead of today's race in his continued pursuit of Lee Evans. Now, it is worth pointing out, Evans now closer to Angeletta than Aquati is to Evans. There is the chances still for a fight of 6th, and Aquati wants to be part of that because that will bring him up to the lead of silver. So far, the Porsche has been plenty capable today, but it is still trying conditions here. As so we're told, the weather is set to pick back up in the next 10 minutes, but could start slowing down in the next 30. Now, we're not going to be anywhere near the range of going into dry conditions by the end of today's race. It will be wet by looks of things all the way to the checkered flag. So there is currently no respite to these drivers. There's no chances for them to get onto those dry tyres anymore. Perslow on his way out from 16th on the track at the moment. Now having a look in here as Trigg already gets up and ahead of him. That'll be down to at least 17th place. Ryan Castle into the pits in the number 77. In with McLaren. Having a glance in here with Pumerol v Ogan to see if there are any chances here for counter-attack by Ferrari as we get onto the opening straight. 1.3 seconds of the last interval. And across the line now 1 second between Pumerol and Ogan. And the 222's got the momentum here on the 96, but on the run up towards turn 1, that's quickly going to be cut off down at Retafilo. Watching there from the leading of 2 in this fight for the last of the silver podium positions. Robert Ogan holds his nerve with Aston. You see recently there, Aquati now drops in to... No, never mind, he didn't drop in anywhere. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I think I saw something change up and above, but I don't think anything did. I don't know what you would call it. Schizophrenia, maybe? Not really sure. I don't think that would be wrong to diagnose. Taking a look down through Della Rosia. 1.4 seconds between Pumarol and Ogun. So they still hold their ground within 2 seconds. That's much the same story we see here for Angeletta v Evans. That has, I would like to point out, come down from 1.8 seconds now to 1.3. There is palpable chances to see fighting for 6th place, and we see that even further proven on the run up towards Ascari. Now 7 tenths between the pairs. So let's go and catch on board if we can here with that of Lee Evans down through Ascari. I am still perplexed by what went on for the 55 and the 54. Right now, it doesn't show any chances of the 54 putting up much of a fight on counter-attack terms, though he's still trying to gain the distance back. He does find himself multiple seconds off from the 55. Down through turn 11, we're on board at the moment with Lee Evans. And 52 minutes left to go in this race. 1.3 seconds between Angeletta and Evans. 1.9 seconds between Aquati and Evans. We do have recent troubles, and that's for the number 9. That's Declan Anderson with damage. We saw the lights go up there down at turn 3 on the track, Curva Grande, and it seems much in the same case as we saw before there for Peter Mikulas has now beset the Ferrari of Declan Anderson in the lead of gold. The 3rd place Ferrari overall on this grid, now with front end damage. It's clear to see that he's gone in at the wall at turn 3, turned in under aquaplaning. There's so much standing water now at the Curva Grande that the mid-engine cars with such a sharp center of rotation are struggling to maintain themselves on the run around turn 3 in sector 1. Tom Barlow's now into the pit lane with Ferrari, the number 23 now at a stop in the pit lane. Glancing in at emerging gaps here. Right now as it stands, Pumarol catching up to Ogun, 1.4 seconds between the pair of them. Evans now 1.6 seconds from Angeletta, and it's worth pointing out now even closer to now 1.2 seconds, just under 1.3 is Aquati. You see that comes down to 8 tenths of a second, so Julian Aquati has the chances here to attack Lee Evans. We saw from Evans's point of view the fight between himself, or the attempted fight, I would say, between himself and Angeletta. Let's go and catch on board, though, with that Porsche, as things are looking rather spicy now in the talks for that of Julian Aquati. Going to catch on board then, if we can locate him in due course here. Looking for the Porsche, as the menu navigation, as always, here on Assetto Corsa Competizione is terrible. On board then with the silver number 69. Somewhere off in that mist is Lee Evans, and in the last lap he was 8 tenths faster than the Mercedes in front of him. As we see here, the possible emergence of a fight for 7th place, though very difficult to make out amongst the spray. Now 50 minutes left to go here in Monza. It's worth pointing out we do have updates from the front of the field. The 54 is catching now to the 55, but no current indication as to when their fighting will start. We see from the Porsche real struggle here as he's hugging the outer edge of the Curva Grande, trying to account for some extra momentum, or perhaps even washed out wide on entry. And it's that huge pocket of standing water that has already taken 2 drivers, being both Mikulas and now recently with that of Anderson in its stride. Speaking of, we see here from Ryan Castle, who's tucked up right behind Declan Anderson, and you can barely make anything out from the point of view of the 77, down through to Ascari, with the Ferrari up in front of him, somewhere in that spray. I can see now, looking back on it, while the drivers have been dreading conditions like these in Monza, because really, take a look at what you can't see in front of you. As now into the pit lane comes Stefan Nicolai, and looking here, Thomas Pumarol just dropping off of his jacks in front and on his way out of the pits. Aquati having lost a considerable chunk of the gap he was building to Evans in this lap after his incident down at turn 3, where it very nearly put him into the wall. Now getting a look up at the front of the field, we do have even more updates from Dish and Galaxy. 1.5 seconds between the leading Fords in the Platinum category, making their way down through turn 3. You can start to see the rain itself shows no sign of slowing down. even though weather radars had it that it would lighten up just a little bit. Now, I wasn't saying that it was going to completely clear out, but it was going to be considerably lighter. It is still quite heavy conditions out through De La Rogia. Even more issues for Carlos Dish after his car slams the ground, having come up over the sausage curbs on the inside at turn 4. Or turn 5, I should say. Looking back in, you can see the 23 swamped in and amongst traffic here. And Stefan Nikolai in front of him with damage. As whatever happened in the pit lane, he didn't serve his mandatory pit stop. It was a confusing state of affairs for that 555. And even more frustrations are brewing for the 555 in this race today. Getting closer and closer now to the infill of the pit lane at the halfway mark of this race. A lot of drivers still surviving at this length of the race, trying to make this a one-stop strategy. Of course, only one mandatory pit stop, but plenty drivers have still had to come into the pits before that point. You see here, in the case of Lewis Purslow, he does have a chance here on Tom Barlow for 15th place. Of course, these are two separate divisions contesting. At this time, we see Galaxy in the lead, 2.5 seconds up the road from Dish. Conditions only continuing to get worse here for that number 54. And Fate Galaxy could very well be back onto winning form for his 3rd of the season. 2.5 seconds between them, though. Anything can and will happen, such was the case there for the 54 on what looked like a confident lead for the longest time here for Carlos Dish. Quickly came apart. Now into the pit lane goes Anderson, who was able to firm the rest of his stint out there with damage. Oates now across the line to take the lead of Gold. Under strategy, that could still be well within his hands, as that will be an extended run of the pits for Anderson to repair those damages. Davies stays out. So too does that of Angeletta and Evans. Into the pit lane comes that of Julian Aquati. Robert Ogan stays out. Will Friedman, after what has been a proper go of things here in the first half of today's race, having started from the pits, now currently in the top 10. We'll see what he chooses to do on the run out of turn 11. He's looking to stay out. So next on considerations here is going to be the number 4, with the number 11 in front of him already having been to the pit lane, that being Peter Michaelis. We're here with Sean McNally as he makes his way round the curve of Parabolica. 45 minutes, 45 seconds left to go. Not yet coming into the pit lane. Wayne Trigg will be nearest, and right now he's on his way down the curve to Saraglio, so we'll just have to wait and see if that does materialize for him. Looking in here with the leading 2 from Ford, Fate Galaxy and Carlos Dish. Will either of them think to pull the trigger on a run into the pits now? As we get closer and closer to the halfway mark, it does look to be likely the case, but we'll see whether or not it does come to form. The 55 stays out. The 54, we'll see what the going rates are here for Carlos Dish. He's staying out also. Ian Oates would be next in considerations, but just up the road from him, the 29 and the 222. Such is the case there, where Wayne Trigg is still yet to do that. We do see that speeding in the pit lane. Stop-go 30-second penalty for Julian Aquati. Just out past the halfway mark of today's race. Wayne Trigg stays out as he crosses the line. The 222 already having done his pit lane. Thomas Pumerol chasing him 2 seconds behind. Looking in here, Purslow 1.4 seconds from Nikolai. But I imagine will at this time be seeing red after the fact that he's come into the pits has meant nothing. Because right now it's a case where that didn't even count towards his mandate. 555, not yet considering odds to come in. In terms of nearest fights, among the remaining drivers yet to have come in, see for Dish and Galaxy was a gap of 3 seconds. Right now, it doesn't look to be much a chance that they'll go head-to-head before the pit lane. You do see here between a driver who has come in and a driver who hasn't. We cut away from them just a moment ago, but it's Purslow v Nikolai down through turns 1 and 2. 43, just under 44 minutes left to go. Six tenths apart from one another. You see there in the foreground, and now very much so centre frame. There's a case where Purslow had ran all the way out through the Variante Della Rosa, but we also saw in the foreground, just on the run into that corner, was the 444. And that was, not the 444, sorry, the 44. That was Lee Evans, who was forced to cut over Della Rosa. Now 4.9 seconds from Angeletta. Looking back in with the leading Fords, neither of them yet having come in. For the nearest to the line on considerations here are the remaining drivers. We see that Aquati has now come in to serve their stop-go. We're here with Ian Oates in third place, currently leading the Golds to see what is the going rate for the Mercedes. Of course, we saw Declan Anderson into the pits not long ago. That's who he's looking to counter over the course of this race. The grid number now drops down to only 19 cars left on this field as the number continues to dwindle. In the pit lane now, Wayne Trigg. Coming in from behind, you can see approaching the line there. Looks to be, having a glance here. Yes, that is Chris Davies into the pit lane, the number 28. Now in. The 44 stays out, the 96 on his way around turn 11. We'll see here for Robert Ogan what the going rates are looking like for Aston Martin. So it would appear coming into the pits goes the number 96. Number 208, Will Friedman elects to stay out another lap strong here onto lap 24 of this race. It's been brilliant from him so far. Across the line he goes. Davies in the pit lane. Ogan now just coming to a stop. We've seen making their way out now is Wayne Trigg in the number 29. Nearest is the number 4, Sean McNally. Electing to stay out there in silver. Moving up a position over Ogan. For the time being. Nearest to the line, number 88, as it would appear is the case that the 88, yes, we do see here from Old Dollar Up, has now lost out that bronze division lead to Wayne Trigg. So Wayne Trigg looking at his first possible division win in season 11 here in what has been very trying conditions, a real gauntlet race that has been the presiding of things over here in Monza. We see into the pit lane goes Fake Galaxy. Carlos Dish stays out. So a diversification of strategy amongst the leading Fords in Platinum. We could see this pay dividends for Carlos Dish. He recently lost that lead in this race. And now looking to play things the smart direction, trying to get the better strategy over Galaxy. 40 minutes coming up on left to go in this race. Now into the pits goes Fake Galaxy. Watching here with Ian Oates out through turn 11. We'll see if he chooses to make the same decision. And now into the pit lane goes the number 6. So the race for the gold division lead is now back on. Such was the case where Anderson has now dropped to a division 2nd of the current pit runners. And that now changes, as it would appear. Yes, is the case where Anderson is now 8th. Davies now 9th. And what a sudden change that's proven to be. And that's the way the data updates in this game is very slow when you have it on the main screen here. And that's what we often use to be able to get through battles so quickly. We now see Galaxy on his way out as Oates comes to a stop in the pit lane. Evans stays out. And Gilletta now brought back into the pit lane. So what's gone on here for the number 1? Doesn't show that he's officially come to a pit stop. That is with his current icon glowing yellow on the minimap. That would mean an emergency stop for Angeletta, the silver division lead. This has been a very sudden change for him. We'll go to catch on board with a few more drivers and we'll be back to you in just a moment. So you see there, trouble for Angeletta. Stop-go 30-second penalty issued after speeding in the pit lane. More troubles beset the leader of silver. That does give the doors open to Sean McNally to take the lead of the silver division in today's race. We'll leave you on board with the number 1 and be back to you in just a moment's time. Back in at the moment, still with Angeletta. After recent issues, we see there in the foreground that, if I'm not mistaken, was that? Yes, it was. It was Old Dollar Up in the number 88 in trouble down at Ascari. Another victim on this track today. Currently one of 6 drivers left to come into the pits. 37 minutes left to go. That number comes down to 5. McNally into the pits. Angeletta now into the pit lane to serve that stop-go 30-second penalty he was given for speeding in the pit lane. Looking at the emergence of possible new fights, Purslow v Nikolai, one in consideration. Of course, Nikolai still has to serve a mandatory pit stop, one that conforms to the current rule set. We did, if I remember correctly, see that 555 into the pits not too long ago, but it didn't count for him for whatever reason. And now we see stepping out wide at Ascari. There could be further troubles here for Nikolai. Out through turn 10, right behind him, that's Ryan Castle with McLaren trying to unlap himself from the 555 Mercedes. Could the writing be on the wall here for Mercedes in today's race? Their final hope really resting over in gold. Running all the way out wide, there goes Ryan Castle in the number 77 McLaren. Purslow gets out past him. Nikolai into the pit lane. So now only 3 drivers left to go when it comes to those pit stops. Carlos Deege, Lee Evans, and Will Friedman. And as Friedman declines to come in on this lap, actually that number is still 4 drivers, I should say there. I forgot about Old Dollar Up. I thought he would have come into the pits after that last gone incident down at Ascari. 1.8, just under 1.9 seconds between Pumerol and Ogan for the lead of silver. In a very recent change in the power balance. Of course, this is not the first time that Robert Ogan has potentially stood upon the chances of a division win in this championship. Taking a look back through the last couple of rounds, we did see his first silver division win in round 4 in Imola. Do bear with us here as things could cut out on the microphone very quickly. Just some stuff going on in the background. Robert Ogan currently holding on to that lead. 1.5 seconds now between himself and Thomas Pumerol. Pumerol looking at his chances of a first division win of the season. Ogan looking at his possible second. We see in behind here Purslow v McNally for the last of the silver division podium steps. 2.2 seconds between the twin Mercedes cars. The grid now down to 18 vehicles with the retirement of the 555. We see catching out the 32 here at the very same corner we saw for the 555 was trouble at down here at Ascari. Purslow struggling for grip all to the same. Deege still having stayed away from the pit entry. We see here for Lee Evans. He's going for it in the number 44, the current lead of gold. We'll see where he slots in though. Will it be Oates? Will it be Anderson? Right now though, Anderson's 10.5 seconds away from Oates. Oates could be on the chance here to lead in gold. He makes his way down the curve to Saraglio. Meanwhile, Evans is now into the pit lane in the number 44. Will Friedman would be next in considerations, but he elects to stay out once more. 34 minutes left to go, holding on to lap 28. Checking around for that number 88 to see here if Old Dollar is yet considering his options for a pit lane run. Not right now as it stands down through the curve to Saraglio. Down in 17th place. Now, getting a look here over towards, again, the newly emerging fights for the lead. We now see getting much closer, 1.1 seconds and closing as Pumerol to Ogan. Meanwhile, Bay Galaxy takes up the helm of second place, overtaking Lee Evans. Carlos Deege still holding out here onto lap 29. Ford now occupying the top 3 steps of the overall podium. That's for the entirety now of the remaining platinum drivers, with the retirement of Nikolai. Leaves only 3 platinums left in this race. Down through the Curva de Lesmo, there was trouble up in front for the number 4. That was Sean McNally off of turn 7. That drops him behind as it stands there. Antonio Angeletta on the run down through the Curva de Saraglio. McNally now to the back of the silver top 5, and that does allow for Purslow to come up in towards a podium. Angeletta now up to 4th in division, otherwise 10th and 11th between those two. And we see now 0.2 of a second emerging here between Ogun and Pumarol. So getting a look on board with these two, as it does look to hot up here for the fight of the silver division lead. Watching with the defending cars, the first to be found on board with here, the Aston Martin of Robert Ogun. As it would stand then, fighting for 8th place, but locally this is a fight for division first. Down towards De La Rogia. Watching over the rear wing of the Aston Martin to see the Ferrari. Kicked a tremendous amount of spray into his face. 32 minutes left to go. Down through to turn 6. Down through Curva de Saraglio. Looking in the cockpit view, we do get a bit of a cheeky rendering glitch that does give us an opportunity to actually see the distance between the Ferrari and the Aston Martin, because there's no spray in the mirrors. As you can see, getting very close now is Pumarol to Ogun. On the external cameras, we see them practically pushing each other down towards the run of things at turn 11. Meanwhile, the 54 is into the pit lane, such is the case there for Carlos Dish. Now going up on the inside is Pumarol for the lead of silver. Ogun dropping back down to 9th place overall, division 2nd. As you can see, pivoting out there from turn 11. There's just no grip down at Parabolica. The Aston Martin so nearly making its way to the wall, now drops an even further distance off from Thomas Pumarol, who was at the standing of it just over, I think, a second faster. Just under a second faster, actually. Looking up towards the front of the field here, just quickly glancing on through to see the second half of that fight with Pumarol now leading in silver. Going to look in with the 54 emerging from the pit lane. Carlos Dish, as it would appear, did not serve a mandatory pit stop. He went into the pits, he served a pit stop, but it wasn't in line with the rules of the mandatory pit stop, so it would appear, and that has been his undoing. The number 54 has come back out to the track. You can see that orange number 1 still next to him. On the graphic to your bottom left-hand side, that still indicates he has a 1 pit stop to serve, meaning all of that in the pit lane was for nothing. That is almost immediately then given over the signs that Fake Galaxy will win today in Platinum. The next 30 minutes could tell a dramatically different story. Galaxy, this is really been the writing on the wall for him. The number 55 knows he's got this one in the bag now. He's just got to keep his head low for the next 30 minutes of racing here in Monza. You can see the conditions a lot lighter now than when they started with this race. It was biblical amounts of rain here in Monza to start off the race. Now as things get a little bit on the lighter side, there is still rain present, so we are still in full wet conditions. There is no chance now between now and the end of this race that we'll be seeing anything close to dry conditions, though it is worth pointing out in the next 10 minutes conditions will be stopping in terms of rain, but there will still, of course, be a lot of that water on track. Within the next 30 minutes, it's going to start raining again. So we are seeing the rain subside here in Monza after what has been a merciless beating on this track. Nearly a full hour's worth of rain. Actually, it's going to be just over an hour's worth of rain now, coming up onto 29 minutes left to go. There will be just some clearing in the weather. That could give some opportunities over for some closer racing, because it means the spray will start to die down before the next onslaught of rain as water continues to be cleared off the track. We see for Fake Galaxy, he knows he has this one pitched in for a win today. He's just got to play things smart from now to the checkered flag. Looking here, Purslow v Angeletta could be one on the cards. 1.5 seconds between those two as they make their way down through turn 11. Now glancing in with some of the other drivers still yet to have made their visit to the pit stop. We see here the number 208 so nearly in trouble. Will Friedman, surely that is the telltale signs to come into the pits and get some brand new tyres on that Mustang. Into the pits goes the 208. So as it stands right now, your division leaders, at least on track. In Platinum is Carlos Dish. Strategically will be Fake Galaxy. In gold is Ian Oates, in silver is Thomas Pumarol, and in bronze is Wayne Trigg. So we are about to see here, if the standings remain as they are, two brand new division winners in the form of Thomas Pumerol and Wayne Trigg, both of which from Ferrari. Glancing in to see the gap here between Angeletta and Purslow as 1.7 seconds, so up from 1.3, up 0.4 in the last interval alone, down through De La Rogia, behind them Sean McNally. These two looking to fight for the last of the silver podium. With Friedman still in the pit lane, Oates now having moved up towards third, Anderson to fourth, and Davies, as it would stand then, is going to move up into fifth in this race. It will still have Will Friedman as part of that top 10. The question is, how far down from third is he going to find himself upon exiting the pits? We see there, that was the 96. That's Robert Ogan, meaning he's now 9th place as he emerges to the track, but it has still been a brilliant drive here by Will Friedman to go up into the top 10 from the back of the field, from the pit lane, I should point out as well, in conditions such as these. We saw a formidable opening recovery drive. Starting towards the back was Alan Alexander, but was taken out of the fight by a disconnect. We see that Friedman, not beset by the same troubles, has been able to make do with what he has here. Re-emerging to the field, 9th place. Purslow and Angeletta down to the line here from 1.6 seconds, now 0.9. So that's a serious shove up for improvement. There's 7/10 worth in the last two sectors alone. Following on board here with Antonio Angeletta. 26 minutes left to go here in Monza. One second between himself and Purslow. We'll catch on with these two in a moment's time, taking a look again further around the field to see any other emerging fights here on the data. I mean, the closest thing we would have is Ogan v Pumerol for that counter-attack for the lead of silver, but right now I'm not seeing that anywhere near on the cards as what I would see here for the fight of Division 3rd. So we'll stay on board with the number 1 and the number 32 down through turn 7. Heading up down towards the run of things at Ascari, down at turn 8, 9 and 10. There's been a case here where a lot of the drivers have had to hunker into the idea they won't be spending the majority of the race fighting with each other. They're going to be spending the majority of this race surviving the conditions at play here in Monza. And that's the double-edged sword you get really with wet racing. You do have the opportunity to see very close, very chaotic turns in fights, and we've seen plenty of them over the course of round 7. But this is the other side of it. This is the double edge, so to speak, of that proverbial sword, because this is where you find these cases, drivers so close yet so far away because they are battling with their own machines to maintain their form on the track. We've seen the moment that that judgment lapses from them, they will find the walls very, very quickly on this track. Such has been the case for well over a quarter of the grid today. Still 1 second between these two, Angeletta and Purslow. Looking around the field here to see Will Friedman already back on the climb as he's 2.8 seconds and closing from Robert Ogan in 8th place. Seeing here from Will Friedman. He's got clear line of sight on the Aston Martin in front of him down out of turn 10. The dry line a lot more visible now that the rain has for the most part subsided. As yes, I dare say it, we do have no rain now on the track. So the track will slowly but surely start to dry up, but the rain is set to return in the next couple of minutes. So this is only a very momentary reprieve from the, or reprieve I should say, from the apocalyptic rain we've had over the course of today's race. In that last lap, was just shy of 3 seconds faster than Ogun, closing in now to less than 2 seconds. We'll catch on with Friedman in a moment's time, taking a look back into Purslow v Angeletta to see that that has now come up to nearly 2 seconds between the pair of them off the exit of Ascari. Meanwhile, we see here trouble for Friedman down at Retafilo, forced to cut turn 1 and 2 after troubles under the brakes. Watching in then with Will Friedman, seeing what he can make of things here for the fight of 8th. We noted this over the course of our coverage of Thatch GT's Kyle Army round earlier this week, but it's been a case where it's been such a pleasure to watch this driver go to work on a grid like this and carve his way up through the order. There's something very hypnotic about the way that he's able to command presence on the field like this, out through turn 7. A lot of that water hitting the windscreen now. No rainfall, of course. It's just all spray from the Aston up in front of him. Getting a little earlier onto the brakes there, giving himself a bit more time to react on the run up towards Ascari. Out through turn 9, now to turn 10. He's got the run of things, gets onto the throttle, runs a little bit wide off the exit of turn 10, but now has the slipstream here on that of Robert Ogun. The two go side by side on the run up towards turn 11. And going very early on the brakes there. Ogun didn't want to do too much to fight Friedman, knowing that it could have risked his own position on track. As right now, his concerns only rely on category standings. Ogun now still second in the silvers, but now 9th overall in this race. Good move, though, by Friedman. Next in his iron sights, some nearly 4 seconds up the road. 3.7 to be exact, is Thomas Pumerol at the lead of silver. We'll catch back on with him later on, as and when he arrives to fight with the silver division lead. Looking in here with Angeletta, that gap between himself and Purslow has been kept very well maintained, I should point out, at 1.8 seconds. The last time we checked in was 1.9, so this has been very close to that 2-second barrier for the longest time now. Heading in to the last 20 minutes of racing coming up around the corner. There is still the elephant in the room, being the 2 remaining pit stops. Carlos Disch we saw into the pits not long ago, but as it would stand, whatever he did in the pit lane wasn't enough to satisfy the rulings by race control. They have the requirements on the run in towards the pits. Whatever Disch did wasn't enough in their eyes. Ultimately kept him from having a validated pit stop. So now still has to do one by the end of this race. That will forfeit him the lead. Otherwise, he would have led this race over Fate Galaxy by what is currently 13.5 seconds. So that would have been a perfect way for him to turn things around. But whatever happened, some subtle nuance amongst it has kept him from being in that position right now. The other being All Dollar Up, down in 17th place. That's division 2nd amongst the bronze cars, was momentarily in the lead of it earlier on in today's race. Checking in then with the current leader of this race, then Carlos Disch. We'll see though, does he come in on this lap here, lap 35 into lap 36 to serve that pit stop? He knows he has to. He knows he can't walk around this one. Not on this lap, however. He's going to stay out strong. 19.5 minutes left to go. It's worth pointing out, Friedman now 2.7 seconds away. He's got clear line of sight there on Pumerol, who just made his way out of Retafilo. In towards turn 3 he goes. I'll leave you on board with Will Friedman. We'll be back to you in just a moment's time. So 18.5 minutes left to go in this race. Still no news from the front of the field on whether or not Carlos Dish will pit in the next 18 minutes, or if it's a case where he's just going to go all the way to the checkered flag and see whatever happens, happens. For Robert Ogan, we saw recently his loss of 8th place to Will Friedman. Now 2 seconds between himself and the 208 Mustang in front. The number 96, now 9th overall in this race and division 2nd for the Silvers. You see here for Declan Anderson, now division 2nd in the golds. It is worth pointing out he's only about 3 seconds away there, as you saw just zipping away in the foreground from that blue number 6 AMG, that being Ian Oates. Currently in between them, we see here Ryan Castle, and he's entering the danger zone here at turn 3. You can see all of that standing water just off of the dry line, and that's what's claimed so many drivers, including that of Anderson. That what led to his issue earlier on in today's race, as he's forced to cut through De La Rosia, and does bring the tally something closer to 2 seconds. So whether he intended to or not, it's a bit cheeky there from the number 9, but he's in through turn 6, still in pursuit of a return to the lead of gold. We'll catch up and continue to monitor that situation as it now drops into 2 seconds between the two leaders of gold, the number 6 and the number 9, as they make their way up towards Ascari. This will be something we follow very closely here to the end of this race, but getting a look back in to see a recent advance by Will Friedman going to catch on board with the Mustang, now contending with Thomas Pumerol for position on track. This is for 7th place. Down through turn 7 here at the Curva de Lesmo. The rain short to return here on track. We aren't going to be finding ourselves looking anywhere close to dry conditions by the time the checkered flag comes out. Down through to Ascari, half a second between Pumerol and Friedman. As we close in on the last quarter of hour worth of racing here, this could be the move that brings Friedman into 7th place in today's race, down through turn 11. Has to play his cards very, very carefully here. If he goes out too far wide, he will slip and spin off the track. We've seen a few drivers fall victim to that already today. Trying to get more momentum off the exit of Parabolico. The Ferraris held him at arm's length down the opening straight here in towards Rettifilo. Looking for the outside, it would be then down in towards turn 1. Holding the inside is Pumerol. Now going to the inside at turn 2 here at the Variante Rettifilo. Still side by side between Friedman and Pumerol. Off the exit of Rettifilo, great defense from Ferrari. Much to the chagrin then of the 208 Ford. We see there the front end of the car starting to turn in. The back end wants to slip away. We saw it a few times. He's had to make these micro corrections, as it were, out through turn 3. Now for the outside again here at De La Rosia. Now looking to go for a later apex, give him a more aggressive run of things through there to stay along with the Ferrari on the run up towards the Curva de Lesmo at turn 6 and turn 7. Meanwhile, having emerged into frame from behind them is the current race lead. Still yet to have come back into the pits after his recent announcement that whatever happened in the pits between his first stop just didn't end up counting as valid. Up through the Curva de Saraglio. You see for Friedman, you could hear it almost there from the third-person camera. The water being picked up over the left-hand side of the car, trying to drag him in, pivot the car just before he gets in towards the run of things at Ascari. Runs out wide again here at turn 10. Pumerol putting up a very admirable fight here. Still holding the inside in towards turn 11. Friedman looking to have to go the long way around here. The Ferrari can get on the throttle a lot earlier by holding that inside line, but he's got to play things very carefully as to not spin himself out in the process. Looking to mirror the same move he did towards the start of the last lap. Then backing out, going back in behind the Ferrari. Meanwhile, we see there for Dish having been forced to cut Rettifilo as conditions are not much greater now that the rain has come away from the track. Pumaral running wide into the start of De La Roja. This gives the opportunity out now to the 208. Gets up and alongside Thomas Pumaral for 7th place in towards the curve of Delesmo. Will Friedman up into 7th. Great move there. He picked his opportunities and leapt at the chance the moment it appeared for him. Down through turn 7, holds on to 7th place. We'll catch on with him in a moment, taking a look around the field to see any other fights currently in the works. We see here Angeletta, Perslow and McNally still quite close to one another, but nothing yet that constitutes a fight among the silver ranks. Right now it is a state of affairs here. A lot of drivers are quite lonely, as it would appear right now. It is worth pointing out this, however, 1.2 seconds, Oates versus Anderson. Now, it is absolutely worth considering this as a likely fight, as now we can see even further issues confounding the number 6. So Anderson has a chance here. He's had the pace over the course of today's qualifying and the race itself. It's been a case where things have been a little bit less lucky, less fortunate for him over the course of the race, where of course he's coming at the wall during the very wet phase that started this race off. He's turned around here at turn 3, hit the wall, had damage, come into the pits, longer stop than he would have liked, but he's fought things back here to be within a chance of leading in gold. And this would be quite something for him, because that would constitute a win on return. This is his debut to season 11. We've seen him in VSR before. We've seen him, I think, back in season 10. We've seen him back in season 9. We've seen him back in season 8. And we've seen him over on the Interleague at Silverstone, which was won by VSR courtesy of a drive by Cas van Veltzen. And now we are likely to see on his debut to season 11 him fight for his first win of the season. Not many drivers can say they've won on debut. That is a very short list indeed. Anderson could join it. He's definitely got the motivation surrounding it, but he has to keep things nice and cool. The next 11 minutes will decide his fate on that one. Oates already having some stability troubles himself. If the Mercedes is struggling, Lord only knows what the Ferrari is going through in towards turn 11. So 2 fights to consider then. Anderson versus Oates for the lead of gold. Then we take a look down the order to see what's left there of the fight for Pumaral versus Friedman. That's quickly wrapped itself up, as now we see Carlos Disch lapping out past Thomas Pumaral. Now, it is worth considering he still hasn't come back into the pits. A driver who is in the pits at the moment is Old Dollar Up. Right now, the report says next 10 minutes there will be rain. So we are going to be seeing out this race in wet conditions. Looking to catch back on board with these two as this fight now takes center hold. We'll have any updates from the 54 as and when they arrive, but as it stands right now, the 54 looks to be staying out. That's the case for Carlos Disch. We see running way too hot into De La Roja, whereas Anderson joins up and alongside their Oates, letting the Mercedes back out in front of him as he leaps back over the sausage curbs at turns 4 and 5 in towards turn 6. You can see the track is a much more manageable state now. The spray far less, but the rain will be coming back, so the drivers can't relax too much and consider options for dry tyres. It's just simply not a chance for them right here. 9.5 minutes left to go. Heading in towards turn 11, we can see the Mercedes start to wash out wide at Parabolica. Of course, trying to stick himself as far as he can to the outside line. That's where the most momentum's carried. And that's been an area that a lot of the drivers have had to avoid for the longest time from the heavy rainfall that prevailed over the start of this race. You can see there are still pockets of standing water on the opening straight. That's what's kicking up a lot of spray into the eyes here of Declan Anderson. Very late onto the brakes as he charges up towards a possible lead of gold. Down at turns 1 and 2 at the Variante Rettifilo. A lot of water on the exit of that corner there. That could catch a few drivers out. If any of them, I imagine, get too cocky and try to go in on the dries. Heading down towards Della Rosia. The fight for the gold division lead is firmly on here. Down at Della Rosia we go. Mercedes against Ferrari. Ian Oates fighting for another victory this season. Declan Anderson looking at a win on debut if he can get up and ahead of Oates. Down through turn 6. This is a tough one to call here. Ian Oates is a driver with a lot of experience on this grid. He knows what it takes to win in division. He's done so already quite a few times. In the case of Declan Anderson, he's back onto the grid, having taken some time away from VSR, but has not lost any of that fighting spirit. Now carrying that into his performance today. He gets closer and closer and closer down the curve to Saraglio to put himself side by side with Ian Oates. Side by side on the run in towards Ascari. Up into the lead of gold goes Declan Anderson. Down at turn 8, now turn 9, now turn 10. The Mercedes all the way onto the curbs out of turn 9 and 10 to keep things right onto the rear bumper of Anderson, practically pushing the number 9 down towards turn 11. We see here Ian Oates is going to be gunning for the inside down at turn 11, later onto the brakes for the Mercedes. The Ferrari, though, even later to hold ground of position. This has been fantastic stuff to bring us into the last 7 minutes of racing. Meanwhile, news from the 54 as he has come into the pits. Fake Galaxy now leads over Carlos Disch. Declan Anderson third, Ian Oates in fourth, but I don't think their story is quite yet finished. In the slipstream, now up and alongside the Mercedes side by side with the Ferrari, front quarter to rear. Now nearly door to door before we got onto the brakes, but under the brakes even later still. Anderson's gamble of going for those late braking opportunities are starting to pay off as conditions start to dry up. 6 minutes coming up on left to go in today's race. And this has been stellar stuff here from Declan Anderson. He could be looking at a win on debut, but he's got still a few laps before that chance. We have gone into damp conditions now on track. This is what prevailed over the end of qualifying. We see there troubles for Ian Oates as he leaps up over turn 5. We'll catch up with these two in a moment's time. We see into the pit lane. Recent struggles there for Thomas Pumerol, who I imagine didn't intend to end up in the pits here, sideways, as he does so in the 222. That's given the lead of division back over to Robert Ogan, who's looking at his chances for a second division win in silver. More on that as it develops, though. Tishavari now against Trigg for 15th. Wayne Trigg also looking at his first division win in bronze. This would be for the number 29. 5 minutes left to go in this race. It's worth pointing out here the gap between Galaxy and Disch, as it stands here, having a look across the line, stands at only 5.3 seconds. So that's not too bad, all things considered, that he's had to come in for a second stop. See for Pumerol now exiting the pit lane, but I believe having a glance in, yes, he has dropped off of the silver division podium. That's got to be gut-wrenching for the number 222, considering it didn't seem all that implied that he was supposed to be in the pit lane. He looked like he'd actually spun in to the pits in the 222. Now dropping all the way out of the top 5 in silver. It is painful to see something like that happen, because that looked to have been a freak accident for the 222. We see now for a possible fight of Division 4. That was one briefly considered here between Aquati and McNally, as McNally opens the gaps well beyond what looks like 7/10 of a second. I'd say that is getting up in the range of double that now to 1.4 seconds. Tishavari into the pit lane. Number 87 is in. Could it be fuel concerns here for Ford? Into the pits comes the 87. We'll see what the last interval tells us in terms of their fight. Now, we said it was going to be somewhere in the ballpark of about 1.4 seconds, and it's 2.6, so fair enough. The gap currently we're standing between these two. We see behind them appears to be the... it is not, as a matter of fact, the 208. It is the 55, the race-leading Mustang of Fake Galaxy. Now only 4.7 seconds in the lead, as that gap has started to draw down rather quickly, I should point out, between himself and Carlos Disch. We round into what is looking to be the scope of the last 2 laps of racing here in Monza. The penultimate lap coming up around the corner onto lap 44 for the number 55 Mustang. Galaxy looking at a return to winning form after missing out last week in Misano. The wet conditions have evidently been the right sort of recipe for success today. He holds the fastest lap as well. Looking briefly back into the fight of gold, we see now 1.9 seconds between Declan Anderson and Ian Oates. For silver, Robert Ogan holds that tie of the lead now away from Lewis Purslow by quite a considerable distance when you consider Ogan is out of turn 7. Purslow is just on his way around turn 3. What will be more on the cards here is a fight for second in silver. Antonio Angeletta 1.5 seconds away from Purslow at this time. That's 1.7 seconds now, so there is a chance this could bounce back for him. We see for McNally a chance to go onto the podium 1.8 seconds away. We see behind him Tishavari and Akwati. Akwati forced to cut over De La Rogia there after nearly getting into an incident with the 87. We see for Evans now looking at a chance here for a gold podium, 1 second away from Chris Davies. We see that gap for Deesh and Galaxy has now come down to 4.2 seconds. And this is making me think here, just having a quick ponder about this, or this very late pit stop, unorthodox as it may be. Now 3.8 seconds. That gap is spiraling down between Galaxy and Deesh. Has he, dare say, gone on to the dries? Would have been unheard of to consider before this point, but it looks like the conditions may just allow for it. No, as I say that, yep, okay. Right, message heard loud and clear there, as quickly reminded, no, that was not the right call. 3.8 seconds still remains between Galaxy and Deesh. Anderson now 3.7 seconds in the lead over Oates. Davies under siege for the last of the gold division podium steps.
Right, man. The leader is on the final lap. Give it a final push.
As you heard it there, leader on the final lap. Carlos Deesh takes the fastest lap off of Fake Galaxy, so it is a pretty telltale sign. Whatever he's done in the pits now has done a world's difference for the 54. He is rapid as he makes his way in towards turn 1. Just up in front of him, he's got a clear line of sight now on the 55 in the lead of this race. Anderson has one more push here before a possible victory on debut to season 11. Of course, a driver we have seen before here on VSR in the last couple of seasons, but has been mysteriously absent of this season so far. Better late than never is the story of the number 9. On to the last lap of today's race. Looking in here, very close gap forming up now between Sean McNally and Julian Akwati. This is for 4th place in the silvers. We see big slide there for McNally from turn 6 now through to turn 7. Much of the same here as he very nearly pivots into the wall. Akwati has the chance for a run in the background though. Big trouble as it appears for Fake Galaxy. Gone into the wall at turn 7. Carlos Deesh leads in Monza. A sudden turn of the hat here for the race lead. All decided in one corner. I am absolutely speechless. How has this happened here for Fake Galaxy? What has been a master strategy for him has crumbled in the last 3 or 4 corners of this track. I am at a complete loss. At a complete loss, because this is a first we've seen of it, of the race lead decided in the last half of the track, making his way then down through to turn 11. We fought him out of it, but taking his final run of things down at the Curva Parabolica, Carlos Deesh clinches the win here in Platinum and outright at season 11, round 7 in Monza. What a drive from Carlos Deesh. No one would have predicted that. A reluctant P2 for Fake Galaxy, heartbroken at the dismay he has suffered today. Down to the line, a win on debut in season 11 here for Declan Anderson in gold. What a return for Indian Goat. That's his username, the number 9. Declan Anderson wins in gold. Ian Oates second. Chris Davies looking to hold things off from Lee Evans for 3rd in gold. Robert Ogan looking at his 2nd victory in silver. We'll catch on with him at the checkered flag. Down to the line comes Davies for the last of the podium positions in gold. Great performance from the number 28. Evans for 4th in division, 6th overall. Will Friedman finishes on the platinum podium. What a comeback drive from that 208. That was brilliant stuff to see. Started in the pit lane 7th at the end of today's race on a 26 car grid. Making his way down through to turn 11 now. Robert Ogan has been through the ups and downs of today's grid, but right now, as the checkered flag emerges in front of him, is a winner once more in silver. A great drive for Aston Martin. Never count them out in the wet races. Perslow looking at second. Angeletta close behind in third. There's been recent trouble there. Aquati now ahead of McNally in the silver division fight amongst that top 5. Meanwhile, we see a win on debut here for Wayne Trigg in bronze. So 2 new winners for round 7 of VSR season 11. Declan Anderson in gold, and you see here the 29, Wayne Trigg in bronze. Brilliant, brilliant stuff for Ferrari today. 2 division wins after what has felt like a lifetime of woes here. We see Perslow gives the 3rd place there. Actually, no, sorry, 2nd over to Antonio Angeletta. What on earth was the governing factor besides that one? But otherwise looked to have been gifted. Great sportsmanship, though, from Perslow, giving 2nd over to Angeletta. We see McNally finishes in 4th, Aquati 5th, Pumarol Division 6th, but what a drive that has been today. Your final results there in Carlos Dish on the last lap clinches a victory in Monza away from Fate Galaxy after one fell swoop, took the 55 from the race lead at turn 7. Declan Anderson wins on debut in gold. In terms of the other division wins, Robert Ogan picks up his 2nd silver division win after his last one in Imola, picks up another one here in Monza. And in the bronze division, a win on well, not a win on debut, sorry, a brand new win here in bronze for Wayne Trigg. The number 29 wins for Ferrari in the bronze division. You can see at the end of the results, you can see on your left-hand side now getting a look down into the DNFs, and there are plenty among them. Nikolai, Mikulas, Timo, Bernie, Alexander, Gray, and then you have Agaverdi, and then the DNSs, Mantino and Perez. What a race that has been, though. Very well done to the 4 division winners of Dish, Anderson, Ogan, and Trigg. And very well done to all the drivers who fought so diligently over the course of what has been hellish conditions here in Monza. A brilliant, brilliant race then to get us even further into the business end of Season 11. Taking a look at where we'll be on the next round of the championship, we head to the home of the Belgian Grand Prix on the 6th of May for another one-shot qualifying session, but this time one of the longest races of the season after the Nürburgring earlier on in Season 11. It's 2 hours of racing at Spa with 2 mandatory pit stops in what we are assured, unlike today, is dry conditions coming up for the next round at round 8 of the championship. In terms of other broadcasts here on TRTN, we haven't really got much going on until Saturday, where we're back in with the folks over at the HCCL Multi-Class Championship. We'll be going back on board with those lot over the course of this coming weekend. Also, upcoming broadcasts from the Competizione Performance League World Series. And then we might have something going on for Sunday right now. Cannot yet confirm, but rest assured, 2 more broadcasts at the minimum coming up before the end of this broadcast week. But what an endeavour we've had here in Monza with the folks at VSR. Brilliant racing. Very well done then to all the category winners for today. Brilliant, brilliant driving throughout. And what I must say is definitely the wettest race I've ever seen at Monza. Now we understand why drivers fear these conditions so much. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.